Ebusianfo mama kwa baba SVTV Africa so monko so na mon subscribe to your channel na mon bohu de ro mo invite mo friends na mo me join here na me ka subscribe mo scratch me inbox me chat say I subscribe no so ye den enye we bia egiska o no an say I say wa ko Facebook wa like I click like obi ni page ni video ana bibi the same thing we share videos na obo say I trust subscribe as one time thing o click subscribe na unku subscribe biom send be ya the videos go obenya notification and answer ubehu so what I say anything I say subscribe and na so na be boa channel no so me grow first of all before Steven Sanke or the message de be ba no mamenda Aseda Shipping Limited ase omo UK mo UK nyina no ye be sere se mo frɛ Aseda Shipping Limited mo pesa mo de mo boxes na mo parcels mo package bia mo pesa mo de baga na bia na door to door delivery bebia wo UK bia no me say from no mo ngasa mo be ba no wan beje onyama no na omo de abrel wo Ghana Aseda Shipping Limited na sana me sika ne so also o hwe na wo bibia pesa obohu de right simple your platform with the BSA say na man for chance on be come stories no and one say obetimi afre and I'll be frame me personal number 0244 790 902 e o screen so frame me so bibia pesa e bohu de room na bibia afre SVTV Africa sanso na SVTV Africa Foundation we no you be stress at least who from 1 cedi to millions support EMB sana be ya de be boa manfo ye wonyem bebre ya behind the scene amunhu because e ko bi o e man sika ba ye ntwe no mba ye say sana e boa nkofo kakra sana enye de bia so na e be ba ye be ka chere se o muma ise sika bi wo ho a ene de ehun we a na se pese e boa we ani atam na ye de aboa no SVTV Africa Foundation no let's help together ye wo ha se e be boa nkofo nti e be sra mo se mo so mo nta echi na sana misika no I'm share a website na www.svtvafricafoundation.com. So also your main SVTV Africa website no so svtvafrica.com and so with me akọ na akọhwe nyama ne bi. Sa na your main channel no YouTube. Mon subscribe to your YouTube channel we. Better man say Steven Sanke, addiction professional counselor from House of St. Francis. Enko Steven Sanke.
Hello everyone. You are welcome to another edition of our lessons that we started some few weeks ago. My name is Sanke, an addiction professional and a counselor at the House of St. Francis Rehabilitation Center. It may be a true mobile, best 3 weeks new. You started programming. What we did was we started to talk about addiction. In fact, I've been very happy to be part of this program with SVTV Africa Foundation. You started and in same people why you addiction. And in fact, I think that it has been worth it. Now, the most interesting part of addiction is when we begin to study the solution. Those of us who have been in addiction before, now you realize that in coming out of it, we have become totally different people. We have learned so many things we didn't know that we were capable of doing back then. Now in our addiction, we realized we had become hopeless people who didn't know how to do certain things anymore. Now if your brand ding. In your man kitty be a sebe, and go think you to me, is to study your dream found to me boy a brand can to me more. I hear ding ding ding. Nemo mende, I started to say yes, our program of recovery we know. We have become totally different people altogether. Yenti asekra asesa. Sena ye dream fan yoma bi hune sena ye yoma bi nyina asesa. And that is the beauty of recovery. In our previous episode, there's something that I mentioned. I'm going to repeat it this time around. That thing is what? Emotion. I said what? The underlying reason why everybody gets addicted is our inability to handle emotions. Mamenkanichi. Ade baako ana ade kese baako ema ye nyina yenum bia ye use cocaine we ensane ndrobo ni nyina ade baako ema ye nyina yera addiction mu feelings or emotions. Emotions could be positive, it could be negative. Meaning that with minya atinka bia na tuminya feelings bia to say enijie is an example of an emotion. It is a good one. Ebufo is a negative emotion. In English we say what? Happiness and anger. These are all emotions. Now we have said what? Our inability to handle our emotions is what essentially underlines what? Our addictions. Into who be our ultimate emotions as young kofu bebrea obeka to say me no me sana me no because of the ade maybe problem kakra menya wo sika ho and problem amenya wo fie and me yire and me say all those things have led that person to use substances. And so for us to continue to talk about the solution, it is very important that what I mentioned something very crucial to us. There's something we call what? Ego defense, or sometimes we call them what? Defense mechanisms. Today, that is what we are going to talk about, defense mechanisms. What are defense mechanisms? Like I've said, what? Nipe biya wo emotions. Yantisa emotions we are here, and no need to be biya, and my young are finding all sorts of problems, not only in addiction, in every aspect of our lives. Now let us focus on defense mechanisms. What are they? Nyamebo nipa biya no, waboye nyina in such a way that our bodies, as you see them, are able to do so many things that we are not even aware of. Even say wunya ekro, without even putting gentian violet and I say drobia was numpo, the body itself is able to heal. God has created us in a beautiful way, and we are very complex, but yet very beautiful. And one of the things that is beautiful about human beings is what I'm calling what? Ego defense or defense mechanisms. So now, what are defense mechanisms? Defense mechanisms are an unconscious way of the brain to be able to remove negative thoughts or emotions. I'm trying to make this very simple. The ability of the brain to remove negative thoughts or emotions from us or push them away is what we refer to as what? Ego defenses or defense mechanisms. Let's just keep it simple. This is not something for us to be worried about. My main finding different ways of trying to make it very simpler for us. Nipeduana nyamedi amaye no. Eno atumi ye nyoma sonko bi. Te say, wote ho no, se me start say maybe me didi watem. Maybe we obi a obu ho pa me start say me didi watem a. Wo be hu say no. Nsem na me ka fa ho no, ebe ye wo ya. Ye wo ya no, anhwe we obi a wo mpe kasa. Now, so send a mayor, then to me, oh, yeah, one show one. Now we be one, I can say, oh, me from myself in Soho. Abra will be maybe Sana out here. What is happening is that your system itself is refusing to accept that negative emotion that is coming from outside. I don't know if this is difficult, but let me take it again. Into yaka semna, when we say no, asemu yaka no, and ya would de ana anto system no muye no. God has created us in such a way that our body on its own can take them away. And that is what we call the ego defenses or defense mechanisms. Now there are so many of them, and we all use them. You might have heard obi wo ha unso ye bibi na so ye se okoka no kweku maybe unim se kweku no wa ye ade we unya som se kweku ade na wo ye se we ha no wa start ye defense ade na mo ye me say ade na unim pa se ono no ye yo. What the person is doing or what the person is exhibiting is an example of a defense mechanism. There are so many of them. There are some that are directly related to addiction, and there are some that are not directly related to addiction but affect us in so many ways. For the purpose of our conversation, I'm just going to talk about a few, and these ones I'm going to take my time to explain to you. But like I said, defense mechanisms are natural, they are God-given. The only time they become problems for us is when we are not able to use them properly. When we begin to use them too much, they cause problems for us. Let us go straight to the types of defense mechanisms I want to talk about today. Number one, denial. Denial. If anyone has been in addiction before, you realize this is the most commonest word when we go to addiction, because denial is the number one reason that all of us even go into addiction. What is it? First of all, it is a defense mechanism. Secondly, denial. What do you mean to me in denial? Denial is when you refuse to admit a fact. For example, I see black and I choose to call it white. The fact is, it is black, not white. Into when we say me no mensa ni ekumi obi otimi nchen na obi a mebusi obi ahu say no ensa na menom na we are na cigarettes na menom no cause problem ama me pe na me into mu ye. You understand what I'm saying? I can see that I have a problem, but yet I refuse to admit the fact that I have a problem and say I am not an alcoholic, I am not an addict. This is the reason why most of us end up eventually getting into the stage of addiction. Like we said, you don't get to addiction in just one day. It is a process. It takes time. And one of the things that makes us move from one stage to the other is denial. Ubonso starting all that be me the yes me they say na me say before be nakpa we do sa addiction stage, and it is denial that takes us into that stage of addiction. Let me mention the next one, rationalization. These things we have heard all the time. What is rationalization? Rationalization is making excuses. Excuses. Kweku, why are you drinking this Thursday morning? I thought you used to do it every weekend. Oh no, ma, it's because of my friends and because of ABCD. We are always finding excuses to justify something that we are doing. All these two that I've mentioned so far, denial and rationality, are normal. Every human being uses them. But we are saying that our inability to use them properly becomes the problem for us. Into rationalization, everybody rationalizes because sometimes you have to deal with something that makes you emotionally unhappy. You will find that your system naturally may try to find reasons or excuses to make you feel okay. So rationalization is an example of this defense mechanism that we are talking about. Now another one, intellectualization. What is intellectualization? Yenum bebre yesu ade akọ maybe now we busu bi ebusu o brother bi ana o papa bi ana o nua bi wo fie we su ade ache wako school ache. You realize that onimade enti say assembly and assembly. Let me just try to relate it to addiction, for example. Wako school ache enti we say Kweku, you are drinking too much, you are smoking too much. Kweku can now sit back and break down exactly what he's doing to you. Or say, no, do you know that alcohol, when has so and so percentage of this? Say. All you is what? Intellectualizing what you are saying. Let's take, for example, COVID way. During these COVID times, a lot has happened. Some of us probably might have friends or family members who were diagnosed of COVID or even other related diseases. You find that when you are diagnosed of a disease, naturally you begin to study a lot about the disease. You do that because you want to make sure that emotionally you feel better about it. And if I'm diagnosed of COVID right now, automatically my family phone, I'm starting Google what are then the negative effects of COVID, what are this and this. I'm trying to study more because by studying more, I'm going to start feeling better. I might probably feel that my situation is not worse. And so intellectualization is one defense mechanism that what we use to protect ourselves emotionally. Now let me talk about the other one. Sublimation. Sublimation is another form of defense mechanism. What is it? When I was growing up, there was this advert that used to be on TV where the advert used to talk about drug addictions. Cartoon be cartoon be kuskua nkwada bi nkofo titi baby shiwi akwanitwe mom say kweku kwan I say me call library so beji we cooking social. I say that be in that advert there's a message. The message used to say what? When you get the urge to smoke or to drink, you say fire jogging and fire some form of exercises. Why is that so? Even when you get a sexual urge, the strong desire to have sex with someone, and you do not want to do this, one of the ways you can channel this energy is to channel it into some form of productive exercises. So sublimation is when a person can take a negative emotion and channel that negative emotion into some productive venture like exercises. Into buwa uni akuma. Ono nakuma back akra no ahwa no pentokwa. Nti nakuma back akra no peso yentokwa. But this time nipa say no. In order not for me to get too violent and begin to attack people, me kwa koye boxing. What has the person done? Or the same negative emotions no e dey akoshe boxing mu. Nti time ya ne bubefu bia or punching bag ofia or eden or man boom 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 just to deal with that particular emotion. Your back be so a friend projection. Projection there say just like a projector. A projector here machine here they show movies. What does it do? It takes an image and then what? It enlarges the image onto a bigger screen. Projection is when you have a problem. Say me na more problem now maybe me problem is me fan say I cheat in a relationship, for example. Me obi I cheat on my partner. Now fe my partner na start say oye bibi maybe or pick phone calls be na WhatsApp obi a now fe me tete. I then I begin to accuse my partner of being what? A cheat. I didn't think yes sir. The truth of the matter is that me ankasa and I me cheat no. And I me ankasa me negative emotions no. And I me negative attributes no. And I me project onto the next person. I don't know if this is clear. This is very common. It's a very common defense mechanism that we use. Until sometimes we say obi mama or ya dear no or no oshia obi a onye side and the person begins to accuse the person. Chinchina wona wo ye ube ye wi pa okay no ye wi no. Because on ye wi nti okasa obi a ye and then a wi. That is one of the defense mechanisms what we call projection. There's another one, repression. I'm just mentioning a few. I can't bear to be pedantally. There are so many of them we cannot be able to tackle all of them. Repression. What is repression? Repression is one of the ones I commonly see now. Uni obi nyanto kwa kasa kakra obeti ano say eye yentwaso. Oh, I don't know who the yentwaso. What the person is doing is what? Suppressing the negative emotion. The person is not ready to deal with that particular emotion. Until a start you see then who the yentwaso. Uno jiri na unu kunu benya akasa ofie. Obema what's na mo ka asem na mo the bottom line of it and then solve it once and for all no. Mo start you say yeah mu de yentwaso. It is called what? Repression. It is a defense mechanism because more ka asem no na ye ne ya. On pese be ye ne ya nti o se den So the person is what? Suppressing that negative emotion. Regression is another type. I'll end with regression. What is regression? Regression is when one person, or your opinion, me I am an adult, I am experiencing a negative emotion right now. Because I'm experiencing this negative emotion, then I begin to adapt a certain maybe childhood behavior to deal with that emotion. Maybe not penny to say me, oye me bibi na ye me ya, maybe me kai say me ya kwada no, se bibi ye me ya me de mensaje menum na me tafre me nsa ho na afi ma ye okay. Nti ma be penny ni mpo, oye me ade na ye me ya, me de mensaje menum na me fefe me nsa ho, because I want to deal with what that negative emotion by going back to behave like a child. Let's take another very awkward example. I'm sure some of you will not like it, but let me still use it. Let's say you're a married woman or a married man. You live with your husband, you live with your wife. Let's just say you're a man. You have a problem with your partner. Most starting say, "Will be a maybe mama pe wa sempa, mama ajijo so you know, uya kwenya uya mama ba, yanka say uya mama ba, mama atune bo kwan growing up, you know, there are mothers like that who take care of their sons really well, and even before another woman will come and marry the man, the woman will inspect you or bon kwan man, you say man, and it's a bear man or any mommy very close. Sisi aweni onya kwada bi mo ye penny who is married. Or ye married no, afi one ne yiri enya asem. One ne yiri nya asem no. Papa ne betina afia na be man ne betina afia no ne yiri na ka asem no. What does the man do? The man decides wo de me feel na wa pack a small bag na afi we fifie akotena ne maame nchen. I don't know yes ah. Onim se ofifie efi wo nchen na akotena ne maame nchen a ne maame ebeboa no. Because oya akwa onyi ni nyina ne maame na eboa no through all of his negative experiences. That person is using a defense mechanism we call it regression, behaving like a child. You are an adult. If you have an issue with your wife, why don't you sit with your wife and what? Deal with the issue with your wife. But that person decides that no, I take 2 days off, go and live with my mother to solve the emotion. It is a what? A defense mechanism we call what? Regression. Now there are so many defense mechanisms and I wouldn't want to talk about all of them. Reaction formations, manipulations, reaction formation. Why you be a ya and I am a menum, maybe ye yen your master, a yo mo ya, yanti, any ya, so beba fibia now finishing. Oh, it's not a kumuna yen ya. Just say the emotion now all shown in Nimino, a totally different from the one akumemuno. Nakumemutim say no yen ya, but in Nimino or smiley. Now, I'm saying that what all of these things that I've said, and many more that I will not be able to say in this episode, are natural. They happen unconsciously. Nyame boy and ye nyina no ade ba ko de kan ye ho or de kan ye ho sena ye de be protect ye ho. Now it gets to a point when we begin to misuse these defense mechanisms. Sometimes in addiction, for example, we are very manipulative. Manipulation in itself is a defense mechanism. We use these defense mechanisms too much to the point that we refuse to admit certain things and then we land ourselves in so many problems. People who are not even addicts find themselves misusing these defense mechanisms. So for us to be able to understand all of these things, when we start the journey of recovery, all of these things are important for us to understand our journey properly. That's why I keep saying those of us who have been in addiction, those of us who are recovering from addiction, have learned so much. The things that we know today, if you take your time to go through with us and understand them, you yourself can better your life in a different way. So all of these are natural. And there are other emotions: anger, happiness, anxiety. They are all fear. They are all emotions, and these emotions are God-given. We don't conjure them magically. They are God-given. Nyamimpo, nibufu. In the Bible, what happened when God got angry and he caused rain to come and destroy them? What did he do? He, God himself, what did he do? He said what? I will use this rainbow to remind me not to get angry to this point again. Ono nyamino na ye nipa. And what we are saying is that anger is God-given, but when you do not use the anger properly, it becomes a problem for you. And you might say that I am quick-tempered, I have a problem with anger, and then you are using. The problem is that we are misusing the emotion. So today what we have talked about is a defense mechanism, trying to understand emotions and why we do all these things. For us to critically understand recovery or go through our recovery journey, this is what I decided that we talk about today. Now next week when we meet, what we are going to do is that we are going to talk about the different pathways to recovery. Before someone can come out of addiction, there are different ways to go about it. Next week when we meet, we will talk about all of this. But remember, emotions is the underlying factor or reason behind all of our addictions. And so in all the other things that we are going to talk about, you are going to hear of a lot of other emotions coming up here and there. Thank you very much for joining me, and I hope to see you again next week. Bye.
Wow, you better Steven Sanke as addiction professional counselor. He said, "Debiano unyamre otimidisa acheche we teachings we brewo SBTV Africa." So, monim say ye ghetto life stories. Ye ne addicts for no kasania drug addicts for no kasania ade. The more one by the phase 2 ba. And so mo share the more ones e bakra afiansa ye ba be ko Accra, part of Accra. Mo be hwe ni nyina. The year previously nyina na ye tema kra ye wie but ye tema kakra nti afi na ye ba be wura Accra mo nti mo hwe ye the more e ba e wo channel we so ni nyina na say ye enye say mo be ka stories keke but also no omo be educate ye ni nso ye hwe say na e be ye omo pese mo jai no. That is the word I'm used to. Be wo a onye na dwe so pese jai but omo pese mo jai no omo na mo ye target say na be ye be hwe we say means kakaka na ye ni omo ko rehab na omo mpese mu jai de sa bas nipa ne nya na dwe so pese ujai na won ne ko rehab obedwane obakro obesa ko back to it again but omo mpese mu jai no ye be hwe se na ye be ya ye be bo omo enti kakaka se na ye kan no foundation mo man support o ana wa frame me o ana wa WhatsApp me o DJ Nyame e pese me de me we ma wo mfa mbo wo mfa support we na wa WhatsApp na bibia ye fine me na ma ne de WhatsApp me ha platform ne bia mo bia sa so na wo story bia pese wo share platform so no answer be frame 0244 790902 ana oni mo bi ana obi ko atiti mu ana bibi ha obi na pese ni discuss ni infantu amanfofo ni enhwe se na be boa na for SVTV Africa ye fa bi DJ Nyame meda Aseda Shipping Limited ase mo amu UK nya door to door delivery mo choose Aseda Shipping Limited omba beje onyama no bia wo UK bia wo de from omba beje a no de gu shipping no mo de abrel e o Ghana ye beda o ma se mo numbers de gu screen so no Aseda Shipping Limited shambo krom na o ka se tour meje so tutu tour enti mo nko so na mo subscribe so you could hit it subscribe bell no so ya cho ade kokko na ya cho subscribe no hit so a adoma bi so side e beba na wa hit notification ye de bibi tour a obehu na obe first person obehu makra mo tour